X-Men, Pryde of the X-Men, the show that looked at the most politically charged, emotionally complex superhero comic on newsstands in 1989 and decided the appropriate response was, you know what this needs? A guy from Australia. Wolverine, Canadian by birth, berserker by temperament, and in this cartoon, the first time the X-Men ever appeared in animated form, Logan speaks with the accent of a man who's about to throw another shrimp on the barbie.
Welcome her. Wait, she's not joining the X-Men, is she? She's just a kid.
Because Crocodile Dundee was a thing.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
And someone with creative authority thought it was transferable. But here's the thing, despite the accent, despite the campy tone, despite being cancelled before a single follow-up episode was ever produced, this orphan, half-forgotten 30-minute pilot is the direct reason the 1992 X-Men animated series exists. It's the reason that Konami arcade machines ate your quarters in 1992, and it's the reason a generation of X-Men fans know who Kitty Pryde is. Aside from the comics, of course. This is the story of Pryde of the X-Men, a kitchen sink pilot that crammed an entire franchise Bible into a half hour, got killed by corporate chaos before anyone could do anything with it, and then haunted every X-Men adaptation that came after it like a ghost with a very specific grudge. Let's talk about it. By 1989, Marvel Productions had been running a specific animated universe since 1978. Fantastic Four, Spider-Woman, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, The Incredible Hulk. 11 years of Saturday morning mythology assembled in a continuous lineage stretching back to D. Pathy Freeling Enterprises. That's a creative infrastructure. That's an institution. And the comics feeding that universe? Well, by 1989, Chris Claremont's Uncanny X-Men run had transformed the franchise from a canceled curiosity into the best-selling comic in North America. This wasn't a niche property anymore. The Dark Phoenix saga, Days of Future Past, God Loves, Man Kills. These were serious works, dense, politically charged, emotionally brutal, and they were absolutely drowning in mainstream readers. So the decision to finally produce an X-Men animated pilot made complete sense. The question was how? And that's where it gets interesting because the pilot that became Pryde of the X-Men wasn't born from a grand creative strategy. It was born from a budget surplus. The funding earmarked for a 20th episode of RoboCop the animated series, a show I will confidently assert the world did not need 13 episodes of, was quietly redirected by Marvel production executives Margaret Leoch and Lee Gunther into a single self-contained X-Men pilot. One episode, no guarantee of a series, just a proof of concept to shop around to networks and syndication markets. For animation, they went to Toei, the same Toei behind Dragon Ball Z, behind Sailor Moon, behind essentially every piece of anime that shaped a generation. Well, aside from Tatsunoko, of course. And damn, does that pedigree show, because whatever criticisms you want to level at Pryde of the X-Men, the animation itself is generally impressive, fluid, vibrant. Characters move with weight and personality in a way that a lot of domestic animation in 1989 simply wasn't achieving. Writer Larry Parr grounded this script in Uncanny X-Men issues 129 through 139, the arc that introduced Kitty Pryde as the audience surrogate, new recruit joining an already established team. Smart structural choice. Give the viewers a chance who is experiencing everything for the first time, and you never have to pause the story to explain mythology. Kitty walks into the X mansion, the audience walks with us. Stan Lee himself provided narration because of course he did. The voice cast assembled here is nothing to dismiss. Earl Bowen, a criminally underrated character actor, plays Magneto with a measured menace that outperforms a lot of what the character got in the years that followed. Neil Ross as Nightcrawler, and Frank Welker as Toad and Lockheed. These are professionals. And then there's Wolverine, voiced by Patrick Penny, with an Australian accent. And someone apparently decided that dangerous foreigner with a knife translated cleanly across hemispheres. It is objectively one of the more confusing creative decisions in superhero animation history. Though I will note somewhat grimly that Neil Ross had already voiced an Australian Wolverine in Spider Man and His Amazing Friends, which at least suggests some form of internal consistency.
How you doing? Want a piece of fruit?
Juggernaut!
Hold it, bullethead. You'll have to go through us first. Now it's my turn. I'm stuck!
Even if that consistency is built on a foundation of complete nonsense. The pilot also made one choice that remains generally singular in the entire history of X-Men media. In print, animation, or film, Emma Frost, the White Queen, is placed as a member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists, not the Hellfire Club, not the Inner Circle, Magneto's Brotherhood. This has never happened in any continuity ever. Not before this pilot, not after. It stands as a creative decision so specific, so inexplicable, and so structurally weird that it essentially exists in its own pocket dimension of lore. Every major X-Men concept crammed into 30 minutes of screen time. The Danger Room, Asteroid M, the Blackbird, the Scorpio Comet as a doomsday device. It's chaotic, breathless, and structurally ambitious in a way that almost admirable given the constraints. Composer Robert J. Walsh, the man behind Gem and the Transformer themes, as well as G.I. Joe, a real American hero, delivered a main title so aggressively earnest it would have been iconic if the show had lasted. Here's where I have to be honest with you, because the nostalgia machine around this pilot can sometimes obscure what it actually is. The tone is slightly wrong, not cosmically wrong, not catastrophically wrong, but wrong in a way that matters. Chris Claremont's X-Men were operatic tragic. They were about prejudice, about the psychic cost of being feared and hated. Days of Future Past ends in a concentration camp. God loves, man kills involved a televangelist murdering mutant children. This is the source material and Pryde of the X-Men with its Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists and its comet redirection MacGuffin plot and its Magneto cackling from Asteroid M treats that source material like a Saturday morning cartoon because it was a Saturday morning cartoon. Kitty Pryde in her comics was written as sharp, resourceful, and emotionally complex and sometimes annoying, especially when she made reference like, well, you have to read the comics. I won't get into it. But that said, the character would eventually become Shadowcat and face down Nazis in a Chris Claremont storyline is here mostly sacred and apologetic. Ouch. And the 30-minute format simply cannot support the ambition. The pilot introduces 8 X-Men, 5 Brotherhood members, a global threat, and a character building emotional arc for Kitty in 20 something minutes of actual content. The universe breathes about it as much as the vacuum of space, which, come to think of it, may have been Nightcrawler's situation by the end of the episode. The pilot aired in September 16, 1989 as part of the Marvel Action Universe syndication block, and within months of its completion, Marvel Entertainment Group ceased production on everything in development. Here's what happened. New World Pictures had purchased the Marvel Entertainment Group from Cadence Industry in 1986. In January 1989, the same window the plot was delivered, New World sold Marvel to the Andrews Group. Corporate ownership transfer, financial priorities reset, and the entire Marvel Productions animated pipeline was shut down. Everything, every project, every series, every concept, except of course Muppet Babies. This pilot effectively marked the end of the entire Marvel Productions animated universe, a creative lineage that stretched back 11 years to 1978, killed not by bad ratings, not by audience disinterest, killed by a corporate transaction and the merchandising power of instant Muppets. Now, fast forward to 1991. Margaret Loesch, same executive producer who shepherded Pride of the X-Men into existence, become head of the Fox Children's Network. And she doesn't forget. She pitches Fox on a brand new X-Men animated series. The first pitch is rejected. She pitches again. This time she brings the Pryde pilot as Exhibit A, proof of concept, proof of audience interest, proof that an X-Men show could work. Fox greenlights it. X-Men, the animated series, premieres in October 1982. And if you know your animation history, you know it became one of the most defining superhero cartoons of the decade. Technically grueling, emotionally ambitious, tonally committed to the seriousness that Pryde couldn't reach. And here's what's quietly remarkable. The premiere episode, Night of the Sentinels, uses the exact same structural premise as Pryde of the X-Men. A new young recruit arrives at the X-Men mansion. She doesn't understand the world she's entered. She becomes the audience point of view. The team is established around her. They just swapped Kitty Pryde for Jubilee. The skeleton was Pryde, but they kept the bones and rebuilt the body. And then there's Konami in 1982. The same year the animated series premiered, Konami produced an X-Men arcade beat 'em up that would eventually eat the allowances of an entire generation. 6 players, simultaneous. Cyclops, Colossus, Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, and Dazzler? The character designs for the game were taken directly from Pryde of the X-Men, not the comics, not the 92 animated series, the 1989 pilot. Every quarter you fed into that machine, every corporate brawl through Magneto's forces, you were playing in the visual language of a pilot that was technically dead. The ghost was already in the machine. And finally, when X-Men 97 was in development, courtesy of Bo DeMeo and of course the great Larry Houston, it was reported that Pryde of the X-Men was considered essential homework for the creative team, a retroactive canonization. The pilot that built nothing became, across 35 years, the blueprint of everything. Wolverine's accent aside, but here's the irony of ironies. In the X-Men films, you have Australian Hugh Jackman portraying Wolverine. So you can say that the pilot and Wolverine's questionable casting came full circle. Pryde of the X-Men has the gear, the Toei animation, the Walsh theme song, the Claremont source material. None of it matters in the end because Marvel's accounting department was already deciding who was packaged, but the bones survive, whether adamantium or not, and they always do. If you want genuine video essays on cult television, retro animation, forgotten pop culture, subscribe to Pulp Vision. Thanks for watching and stay excellent.